Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a late night insight video, and it is from another sample from my very good friend Nick from across the pond. He sent me all kind of goodies that I don't have access to, and I love kind of the amount that he gave me because I can wear them over and over and over again. So this one I've worn 5 times to bed. And you can see just the dent that I've put in it. I don't know if you can really tell how much juice I used, but this was pretty close to full. And so this is called Slumberhouse Kiste. Now, I must warn you, there are 2 versions of Kiste. There was a 2015 version when it initially came out, and there was a 2022 version from last year. I must profess that I am ignorant as to which version this is, but I don't think it really matters because Josh Loeb, the owner of Slumberhouse, basically he has a little extra description on the updated one, and it basically says, richer, darker, smoother, pure gold. Sorry about the sirens. It's raining out there, so who knows what's going on outside. But it says pure gold, golden honey, golden peach, golden tobacco, golden resins, a perfume completely gilded in all shades of syrupy gold with a dry down that glows and melts, a honey that won't quit with soft vanilla oak, fossil amber, and benzoin along for the ride. So, I have to say that testing some of these what I call artisanal houses, of course, I would say I have the top tier houses for me, the stuff like Arige Ladore and Ensar and Bortnikovs and those that I absolutely love. I still have a lot of Bortnikovs to review on the channel. But then there's those secondary houses, you know, and this is a house that I actually only own 1 bottle, and it's of Norn, and it's because somebody very kindly sent it to me. If it wasn't for that, I would own 0 bottles of Slumberhouse. Just from getting to know the house, though, it's a house that I would love to dive into further because Josh Loeb has some quality creations. I'd love a bottle of 6s and 7s. I know that's going to be impossible probably to find. I've got some reviews up on the channel. Excuse me. I've reviewed things like Ore and a couple of the others. You can go check out my thoughts on a few slumber houses, but we're adding Kiste to the list. And I will tell you that this is an addictive, alluring scent. And if you said, Ramsey, I'm going to give you the chance to add 2 tobaccos to your collection that you don't already own, this would be one of those 2. The other one would be Bortnikov's Tabac Doré, which is sort of in the same ballpark as Oud Grand, Oud Balsam by Feel Oud, which I actually own a bottle of. So I probably don't need a bottle of Tabac Doré, but I think Tabac Doré is a better fragrance than Oud Balsam. So just a little side note, a little sidebar on how I feel about the house of Slumberhouse. He does some very creative things, and the quality of the juice is impeccable. You can tell the ingredients are amazing. You know, this one's interesting because it opens up with this very syrupy, fruity, syrupy tobacco is basically how it opens up. And I can't call myself an expert on it because, like I said, I've only worn this to bed. But I love spraying this at night before bed. There's something so comforting and relaxing about this scent. And I love tobacco. If you're a tobacco lover, I would say this is almost a must sniff. You have to get your nose on Kiste. And that golden hue color is actually a pretty good indicator of how it smells. And it is relentless. I mean, the honey tobacco note here. So, you know, it's almost like this syrupy, fruity, praline, sort of like pecan, peach. And then there's this weird elderberry note that gives off this sort of slight flicker of plum. But almost like black plums, you know, like super dark, rich plums, right? Ones that are just about at the point where if you let them sit any longer, you won't be able to eat them. They have to be consumed now because they are ripe as ripe can be, right? Very black plums. And elderberry to me, and I actually have elderberry syrup. I've got the little chewable elderberries. And so I'm an elderberry fan, I must confess. But I can't say I've ever actually smelled the real thing, or I assume the syrup and stuff like that you can take is real elderberry, but I've never had like a real elderberry, if that makes sense. And I've never smelled the flowers that grow on the plant personally. But I can tell you that every time I taste or smell elderberry, in the form that I have access to, it always smells like a very dark berry to me, you know, like a blackberry sort of. And what's interesting is the leaves and flowers are known to give off a slight pissy smell. And so if you watched my review of Hugo Boss #1 from yesterday, my Vintage Hall of Fame review of Hugo Boss #1, which has been a long time coming, that opens up much more urinal, cake, men's restroom, whatever you want to call it, pissy honey. This is nowhere near as pissy. And in fact, I wouldn't consider this pissy at all. But the fact that the sort of leaves and the flowers of the elderberry give off a slight pissy quality, it's almost like it's there in the background, but what you're really getting is this beautiful, just perfect, beautiful, executed, sweet golden honey. With the tobacco. And the tobacco is, of course, golden leaves, like he said. And I would urge you to go check out my Vintage Hall of Fame review on Boss #1 if you want to hear about a real animalic honey. This is a little different. Now, they do say with berries that the darker the berry, the sweeter the juice. And it's almost like the dark elderberry juice in here is so sweet. It almost feels like it's almost turning to the point of like a sweet raisin, you know, like it was a dark table grape, but one of those big fat dark dinner table grapes that they call them. But it's almost turned to like a sweet raisin, if that makes sense. And there's something almost slightly boozy. There's no booze note listed in the Accord, but there's almost something just ever so slightly boozy. Like you could assume there's a hint of a very high quality scotch in the background, you know, out of a fancy glass, you know, with a giant ice cube in the middle. There's that vibe, right? Fancy jazz playing in the background. I mean, it really is, oh, it's a beautiful tobacco. I mean, I don't rate fragrances, but this is an amazing tobacco fragrance. And it is surrounded by my notes that you just can't help but appreciating the rich, moist, deep, spicy tobacco that's in here. It's very pungent, and it's almost like you are watching somebody pinch tobacco directly out of the pouch and stick it into the pipe and you know, sort of pack it in, if that makes sense. It's a very beautiful, fine tobacco Accord that right from the get-go, you get this sweet, but not disgustingly sweet. That's what makes this so hard, is there's many modern fragrances that I smell that have a disgusting sweetness to my nose. Like I am instantly put off, right, by the sweetness. Think about something like Naxos. Do not buy that crap. Like if you came to me and you said, Ramsey, I am thinking about buying Naxos, I would say, brakes right now. Stop what you're doing. Left turn time. Look into something like Kiste, because this does that sweet tobacco thing that Naxos is trying to do without the disgusting, screechy, you know, almost like it's ripping the inside of your nostrils out sweetness. This does it properly, elegant, and the materials are so high quality. And while it's going on, which I would guess this fragrance probably lasts about 8 to 10 hours, give or take. But during those 8 to 10 hours, it's relentless. It just feels like it's strong for 6 or 7 hours, and then it just falls off a cliff. And the last couple hours are you know, lighter, but it stays strong for such a large percentage of those 8 to 10 hours, I would say, from my experience, that it, you know, I can smell it when I wake up in the morning. I can smell it when I wake up in the morning. And I put it on early enough in the evening where I could see what it feels like 5, 6, 7 hours in. It's just a beautiful tobacco scent. Just absolutely lovely by Josh Loeb. And so if you're a fan of those tobacco fragrances that really highlight the sweetness of the tobacco, I would urge you to check this out. I would really urge you to check out Kiste. It's an amazing release for a tobacco lover and a honey lover, because there is that golden honeyed hue like you talked about. So the other thing I would mention, speaking of highlighting, is this fragrance does a very good job of highlighting the complexity of the tobacco notes. because tobacco is actually one of the most complex notes in all of perfumery. It is something like 300 different note, like essential oils, or I would say like 300 different molecules could be pulled from tobacco. It goes all over the place. Tobacco is such a complex and rich note when it's done properly. Excuse me. And you know, this is one of those tobacco fragrances that properly highlights the note to me. You know, and one of the things that I noticed as I wore this, and it kept reminding me of something, and it finally hit me the other day, and I was like, okay, it's time to do the review, is for a while there, I smoked a hookah. So I would come home from work, I would get my, you know, coals and heat them up on the stove. Now this is a long time ago, almost in like a different life. But I owned a hookah, and it was like one of my guilty pleasures after coming home from work. I would have a drink, I would get my coals, put them on the hookah, get the tobacco, and it was a harmless hobby, basically, outside of the times that the coals fell and burned like a hole in the rug or in the couch or something like that, right? But outside of that, the hookah has this very dark, the hookah tobacco has this very dark black stickiness to it. And the reason is that hookah tobacco, from my understanding, is molasses based. So if you've ever been to any of those hookah lounges or anything like that, and you smoke hookah, that is a molasses-based tobacco. And that is what hit me with Kiste, because there is definitely 100% this hookah molasses tobacco feel. And the molasses gives it sort of like a sweet but earthiness. And molasses feels very thick. It feels very dense. You know, if you've ever smoked molasses tobacco, it's really sticky when you put it in there. You're not supposed to pack it in densely like a pipe. You're supposed to give it some space to breathe, because molasses is very sticky and it can clog everything up. And you have to clean it out whenever you're done, or it'll just get sticky and gunky in there, right? And so you get that in here. And along with that, you know, gunky molasses tobacco feel, you almost get something that feels like roasted walnuts or roasted chestnuts or almonds, or, you know, something along those lines. And it's such a deep, complex fragrance for a sweet tobacco, for a pipe tobacco-like smell, a hookah tobacco-like smell. And along with that, of course, you get that Scotch whiskey vibe like I talked about earlier. And along with that Scotch whiskey, there is a note of Scotch heather, which actually is a completely different take. Scotch heather and Scotch whiskey have nothing to do with each other, but it's interesting because when you take names like Rose or Lily or Violet, you know, those are women's names, popular women's names from the last 100 years or so. Those are all flowers, and everyone associates them with flowers. They associate them with plants. But most people don't associate heather with a plant, but actually it is. And it is basically like an invasive shrub is really what it is. But back in the old days, the pioneers would take the longer sort of stems and make them into brooms and use heather as like to sweep out the house, or to weave into baskets, or they would actually stuff their bedding or pillows with it even. But it's supposed to have this sort of floral, almost musky scent when you smell it. And you definitely get that along with the tobacco. I can't say I'm a heather expert or anything like that, but and what's interesting is apparently this is supposed to be sort of based around Savannah, Georgia. Okay, so I don't think I've ever been to Savannah, Georgia, but I can tell you that I can get the picture of being in Savannah, Georgia, because that peach in the beginning, which I didn't highlight enough with my breakdown so far. I think I pretty much skipped over the peach other than to say there's a fruity vibe, but there's a very specific sort of ripened, almost like peach cobbler feel. There's this, because of that roasted chestnut note that I was talking about earlier, it almost makes it feel, have you ever had like peach cobbler with ice cream and they put like nuts on top or something? roasted walnuts or something like that on top. It's absolutely amazing. And so the peaches here, yes, you do get this ripe Mitsuko peach note sometimes, but other times it really feels like peaches and cream. It feels like peaches and cobbler, in peach cobbler. And what is the capital of peach cobbler? Probably Savannah, Georgia, or Georgia, really. I always think of peaches and Georgia. Those are like linked in my head. Georgia is like the peach capital. And so the peach note in here is brilliant. It's a brilliant peach note. And also in the note breakdown, in the first note breakdown, again, I don't know what version Nick sent me. So Nick, if you could comment down below and let me know which version I'm smelling. But apparently in the very first version, the 2015 version of Kiste, there was a note of sweet tea, like iced sweet tea, which if you can imagine old school Southerners sitting on the porch, it's hot as hell outside, it's 100 degrees every day, probably in summer in Savannah, Georgia, and they've got their fans, and they're just sipping their sweet tea, eating their peaches, probably smoking their pipe tobacco. You know, that's sort of the vibe, right? Lots of land, open field, beautiful peach trees, and that's sort of the vibe that he's trying to capture with the scent. And so it's interesting because this scent has almost everything. The only thing it doesn't have that I would love it to have is that Hugo Boss #1 animalic bit. It's missing that hardcore, you know, urinal pissiness that I love in animalic honey. This is more for the sweeter vibe, which is not usually my thing, but this is executed so brilliantly. I mean, it's a brilliant execution by Josh Loeb. I really have to give him his flowers for just how beautiful this is. You know, sometimes the tobacco feels earthy, sometimes it feels smoky, sometimes it feels crunchy, but mostly it feels like just tobacco just dipped in the heaviest golden honey you could imagine, with that peach, that succulent sort of peach cobbler feel. And the heather, the floral side aspects of the heather, and the very interesting dark berried elderberry that many people overlook, but it definitely 100%, I can smell that dark berry feel. It almost feels like a blackberry. It almost feels like the blackberry in Jubilation 25 to an extent, but deeper and darker. If you've ever had actual elderberry syrup, you'll get that sort of association instantly, right? So also, I should say, in the first iteration, there was a note of henna, which is a floral note that we talked about in Arise Ladore's The History of Indian Attar collection, the History of Attar collection. And also there was a note of honeysuckle blossom, which I can't say I really get either in here. I don't really get a henna, which is a softer sort of white flower from my understanding. And I don't really get the honeysuckle vibe either. I love honeysuckle, to be fair, in fragrances. There's very few that have a really proper, well done honeysuckle note. I reviewed one on the channel called Creed Zesty Mandarin Pamplemousse. That's a discontinued gray cap Creed. There's a brilliant honeysuckle note in there. I know Zoologist has one that has a honeysuckle accord, but you know, the honeysuckle flowers in here, if they are there, I'm probably confusing them for the henna, for the heather, excuse me, because the heather can also give off this sort of you know, floral aspect like I talked about earlier. So yes, I mean, really, I'm a fan. I mean, I'm a fan of this house. There are some that I have smelled that are rough to accept at first, okay? But his creations are, you know, you can't fault a house nowadays for doing something unique and different. One of the biggest complaints in Fragcom is people do, you know, the same thing over and over again. They copy everything. You know, nothing's original. They make 1,000,001 flankers. And Josh Loeb seems to just, I respect him for just kind of doing his own thing. Just, you know, shutting out all of the noise and creating the type of fragrance that he wants to create. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, he's like, well, you know, so what to you? That's kind of his take on it. And I appreciate that. I'm a man who definitely appreciates that. So this is a house I would love to try more of. Like I said, I've got some reviews on Slumberhouse, but some of them are kind of one of those things where you really have to be right there, ready to go. I really enjoyed New Sabet. New Sabet is one of the slumber houses that I would love to add a bottle to the collection one day. But of course, there are so many others to explore still. Jack, and I still need to review Norn, which I have the bottle of, and all that good stuff, right? So there's still more Slumber House reviews to come for the channel. I hope that, you know, my goal in doing these reviews, even on the ones I don't have the channel, or the ones that I don't have the full bottle of, is that I can put my thoughts out there. You know, it's there. It's up forever. So you can use my channel like a little bit of a fragrance encyclopedia, because I've created playlists. So this will go right into the Slumberhouse playlist. You can see, you know, the other Slumberhouse reviews. If you want to go check out my reviews for Guerlain, you can click on the Guerlain playlist. If you want to go see my reviews for Amouage, you can click on the Amouage playlist, so forth and so on. So that's kind of my thought of doing these. I know these are not going to draw the views and of reviewing like the newest fragrance and the new Amouage Jubilation 40 or whatever it is. I understand it's not going to draw those kind of views and clicks and excitement on the channel, but I don't care, because I don't run this like a business. This is just a hobby for me, and this is something that I want to do. I think it's important. I think it's a great way for people to explore and try new fragrances that I think are worthy, you know. And so I love the ability that I can just kind of talk about whatever the hell I want, whenever the hell I want. And so I love that freedom. It's so freeing. I don't feel like I'm tied to the newest releases, like I have to review all the new releases so I get clicks, and so I feel very free doing this. So I hope you enjoyed the review. If you have tried Slumberhouse Kiste, I would love to know your thoughts. Do leave a comment. Love the back and forth. There'll be probably my plan tomorrow. I wore this as my scent of the day, Roja's Danger Parfum. I'm probably going to wear it again tomorrow because I want to review it. And it's going to be a tough one because this is so close to Guerlain's Heritage. But I do really like this. I really enjoy it. But yes, so probably a full review of Danger tomorrow. But we'll see how it goes. We'll see how tomorrow's the day before Christmas. Today it's the 23rd of December 2023. So yes, hope to see your faces in the comments. Let me know what you think of the House of Slumberhouse in general, or Kiste if you've had a chance to smell it. Cheers, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.